half-wit and a cringing, fawning jerk that he wants to take it back once he's said it. In other words, it wasn't a considered statement.
Right.
Because if he'd said anything
the
else...
editor's not letting him do that.
If he'd said anything else, Bush is a very bad president, fine. That's gone controversial. He had to say the one thing that would bring the attention back to his own disastrous period.
Yes.
He's got a gun permanently trained on his own flat feet.
If you'll put those headphones on for me.
Why not, yeah.
We'll take a couple of these phone calls. Bob in Santa Cruz and KJO. Bob, thanks for waiting. And please go ahead. Bob, go ahead.
I happen to believe in God and evolution because evolution itself is a form of intelligence. And that intelligence had to exist before life on Earth in order for evolution to actually work. So, I believe in, a divine creator.
All right, well, let's get a response to that. I mean, we get bogged down in that argument about creation and evolution consistently, and it really doesn't address the question.
No, it really doesn't, and I'm sorry to say that this point doesn't either, because having for a long time resisted the idea that there could have been such a thing as evolution, that it was profane, that it contradicted the idea of creation, which, by the way, it does. People now say they can have it both ways. Oh, it's such a brilliant idea, Darwinism, that it can only have come from God. Well, that's just assimilating any new information to your own theory without admitting that you were wrong in the first place. Now, I'm not a scientist, and I think I'd be right in guessing that nor is the caller. But if I put it to you like this, sir, we have good information to show that 98 to 99% of all the species ever born, ever evolved, ever present on this planet in its relatively short history, have become extinct. What kind of intelligence do you think that shows? Do you think evolution is so smart that it even knows you're here? I'd think you're flattering yourself if you think so. I can reject that kind of flattery myself, without pain.
This email from Ken in Santa Rosa. He says, do you find it more valuable to poison divisive debates with insult and preach to the choir, or try to gain mind share from both sides?
Well, that's great. I wish that was the sweetest question I've been asked all week, but actually the best was in North Carolina, where they said, did I know that Friedrich Nietzsche, they nearly pronounced his name right too, had died after writing against Christ of terminal syphilis? And I said, well, I did know this, but I had my own differences with Nietzsche. And they then asked, in completely level tones, they said, well, did I think there was any medical explanation for my own views comparable to that? And I just had to say, well, thanks for asking, as I will, if I may, to this question too.
You do
very compassionate question. You know how loving the Christians can be.
But you do relish, I mean, very clearly, you do relish this kind of confrontation. Divisiveness aside, are you looking for poison on occasion?
No, what I once said, I was quite proud of it at the time. It seems a bit soft and work now. I said, if the truth doesn't lie, but if the truth could lie, it would lie somewhere in between. The people who look for any middle or compromise between a confrontation of opposed views are basically fooling themselves and trying to fool others. Without contradiction, without conflict, there is no progress. There's no free inquiry. There's no collision of ideas and theories with evidence. There's no clash of minds and brains, and that's what I live to do. And if sometimes it's fun to do it as well as necessary, well, I can live with that. Very quickly,
does it help us particularly to American cable television, MSNBC, Fox, and so on? They program themselves to place two immovable objects opposite each other, two groups of absolutists or two individuals, and we're supposed to take something from that, and about 90% of the time I take nothing from it. I mean,
well, no, that's because, in fact, what you're getting is a quarrel between someone who's posing as an elephant and someone who's posing as a donkey. And they're shouting more and more about less and less. Their real policy differences are practically negligible, as you can see almost every day. They just have to pretend that James Carville isn't married and going to bed with Mary Magdalene, which in fact he is. Well, I'm very much afraid to say he probably is.
Yes.
No, they have to make a huge thing of it because it's a pseudo-fight, and in the green room you see them all over each other and agreeing to meet at the next lobbying dinner in Washington, where I live and where I can see them doing it. No, if you want to see what it would be like, try being me last week saying, yes, I will come on to comment on Reverend Falwell as long as you let me say what I think. Then I say what I think, and they say, you can't say that.
Yes.
They don't say, well, you're wrong. They don't say, you're mistaken. They say, you're not allowed. Because when someone really starts a confrontation, they don't want it, because that wouldn't be phony, and phony is what they do. That's why I don't watch these damn shows.
This is KGO.
I only appear on them.
And that's Christopher Hitchens. 3:46, the Pete Wilson program on KGO. Christopher Hitchens is our guest, and Sean has been waiting in San Mateo. Sean, you're on with Christopher Hitchens.
I just wanted to say thanks for the intelligence, and when I say that, I mean the intelligence on the simplistics of the truth. And in certain religions, or in fact most religions, we're molded and suppressed into believing certain things. And at your beginning you said it would be so great if people could just interact with each other without any religion or any interaction or push from that, and just deal with each other as people. And I think that's a great idea. And
let's get a response to that, Sean. You do hear this from more and more people.
Yes.
Sam Harris was here. That's almost all we heard during the course of the afternoon.
Human solidarity is all you really need to behave well to others and to do the right thing. And you don't have to exclude your own self-interest in it. You think, I want this to happen because I might need it in return, reciprocally. My favorite example is giving blood, being a blood donor. I give a pint of blood. I don't actually lose a pint because I get it back after a few hours and take some fluid, and I haven't lost a pint, but someone's gained one. I have a rare blood group, as it happens. I'm hoping there'll be enough blood around when I need it, which will happen someday. Yeah. But it gives me, even if that wasn't true, it actually gives me pleasure to do this. I can also take pleasure in the sufferings of my enemies.
Yeah.
And on really bad days, in the sufferings of people who are not necessarily my enemies either. But look, religion says that you're created sick, originally sinful, and then you're ordered to be well. Now, that's immoral twice. It's too extreme. It's too strenuous. It leads to the death of self-respect at one end and the promotion of much too much self-absorption in the other.
You're wonderful in this book on the doctrinaire structure of most religions. The notion of raising a child from birth to believe in these things and to fear certain aspects of life. I still remember sitting in catechism classes, I don't know, in 4th or 5th grade as Sister Mary Reginald flitted about the room, drilling us over and over in the catechism so that we had this locked in our brains, and thinking to myself, independently and coming from a Catholic family, and I would still never say this to my 88-year-old mother, thinking to myself, this is a lot of hooey. That thought was going through my brain. The fact is, we find it very hard to resist this as human beings because it's drilled into us. Surely,
but the mind still will work for you. And if you ask me to believe that the human species has been around, let's not quarrel about how many years, okay? I'm willing to say to people, all right, make it 10,000 years if you want. Yeah. But I would say many tens of thousands of years as a fully evolved species. People born, dying, average age, life expectancy, probably about 25 for most of this time. Millions of children dying in childbirth, famine, disease, pestilence, war, all of this. God watches all that for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, only 6,000 years ago, in a remote part of the Middle East, does he decide, better intervene here. Now, I'm sorry, I can't believe that, and I can't really believe that anyone does. It's not likely. And if you're a Christian, you have to believe, no, that isn't true. It's only 2,000 years ago.
Yes, yeah.
Not even a fraction of a second of evolutionary time. I see now the way things are going. Maybe if I have a son of mine torn limb from limb in Bronze Age Palestine, that'll teach the Chinese in the long run to love one another. No. It's not believable. It's not serious.
.353, the Pete Wilson program on KGO. Christopher Hitchens has been our guest. Robert in San Jose with a question. Robert, if you keep it brief, please.
Okay, you pointed out a lot of bad things that came out of religion, and which I'll concede, but I want to point out in the 20th century, two of the atheist philosophies, namely communism and Nazism, were responsible for over 100 million people being killed.
Yes.
So I don't know that atheism necessarily is all that great either.
All right, Robert, thank you. Secularism.
You will like
you address that?
Yeah, of course. You'll like my book if you care to pick it up. We'll have a whole chapter taking on that objection, which is